What do you think caused Jacari to die?
It was malnutrition.
Newly released interrogation and body cam video takes you inside a child abuse turned murder case that a judge called the stuff of a horror movie. A 12-year-old boy found dead inside this home, his bones broken, weighing just 58 pounds.
I knew he would die, but I didn't thought he would die.
What this dad told police about killing his son after months on the run. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Why Jacari? It's a question that detectives have asked the father of a son who was found beaten, emaciated, and dead inside their home in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This is Jacari Robinson. He was just 12 years old. He weighed 58 pounds when police found him dead inside a home. They say he had broken bones as well. It was inside the home where he lived with his dad and two sisters. He also had an older brother who went to the house and found Jacari on the floor, dead, covered in blankets. Police were then called to the house, and this is what they found. Take a look at this newly released body cam video.
Yeah, I have this closet to do too. What? Yeah. Just clearing out these closets to make sure there's no one in there. Alright, let's just do this closet really quick. Hillsham, can I get a light? What is this? Oh.
Check in there.
There. Is this house occupied?
It's barely used as a staying here.
Where's the DOE?
Right there.
Oh.
Doesn't even look lifelike. You're just by yourself. He's been there for a while.
Yeah, for sure.
There's nothing too out of the norm. The pill bottle says something. I can't. Penicillin. I'm allergic to that shit. So.
No adults? Penicillin.
And that door is still locked. It looks like.
Yeah.
I thought the smell was gonna be a lot worse, honestly. It kind of looks like someone wrapped him up like that, put a blanket over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like that top t-shirt on,
Especially if the blanket and the t-shirt is over his head when they come in here.
was that part by his shoulder, the blanket was over his head, or?
I'm assuming MFD came in here and probably removed that back. But you got 2 pairs of sandals here. You got those.
Purses too.
And no one else was in here with him, just him?
Apparently his brother just checked up on him because he hasn't heard from him. His brother outside. I guess he's supposed to be living with dad.
So it's just probably mom's residence?
Either male or female.
A lot of it's, the rooms that me and Hillsham checked, they were females. Like little girl clothes.
That's probably mom. Or some sort of family member.
Where's family at?
No working toilet. No working shower. That's crazy.
I mean, if there's 2 other, bunk beds where the other kids are.
Right. Wonder if this is just a nasty case of neglect.
I want to take a moment and thank Upside for sponsoring today's Law and Crime YouTube takeover. Upside's a free app that gives you cash back when you buy daily essentials like gas or groceries. Even going out to eat at a restaurant, you can use Upside and get real cash back. It is so easy to use. Once you download this free app, you select one of the offers, pay like you typically would with your credit card or your debit card, and then the money will show up in your Upside app. Transfer it over to your bank account, and we're talking about real cash here. I use it every time I fill up my tank, and I typically get between $4 and $6 cash back. Real money that you can use. So if you want to download Upside, you can use the link in the description. Also scan this QR code on your screen. And if you use promo code LCTakeover, Upside will give you an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first tank of gas. Now, back to On the Case. Police obviously redacted the image of the young boy's body on the ground, but you can just see the mess in this home and think of the conditions that Jacari was living in. And then you also get a sense from just hearing how the officer is breathing what this home smelled like. We would later learn that Jacari had been dead in the house for roughly a week. Jacari's dad, Romuan Moye, was nowhere to be found. Police looked for him for months. The boy's body was found in October. They wouldn't arrest him until February. During that time, police believed he actually was active on social media, posting on Facebook about this case, and they would confront him about that in this police interview. Before we get to that point, let's build up from the beginning of this interrogation.
Obviously, we're here because of Jacari. So the main thing that we're wondering here is what happened with Jacari.
Always, not being hard, always has a problem, but I'll just refuse to see it.
What kind of problem?
It's like, say what you want to say and just do whatever you want to do and all types of stuff. Got to be all the way, or you hear him, or you try to attack or other girls. Then at that point, then it started getting to where he just wanted to this steal a lot.
Steal a lot? So he had some discipline problems?
Yeah, he had a lot of this.
What was he stealing?
Just like food, and I couldn't understand that further because he was getting fed.
Okay.
And after he got eaten, it's like he wanted to get up in the middle. He wanted to get up in the middle back, and he wanted to still clear. Like you're the egg card. At some point, he just started getting more to it.
Okay. So he got done stealing food and stuff.
Now, it's hard to understand Moye at times because he just stutters so much and he's so quiet in how he answers these questions from detectives. He told police, though, that he felt he needed to discipline his son because his son would, quote, steal food. And as punishment, he withheld food from Jacari.
Were you not allowing Jacari to eat?
Yes, I'm up there. I can't even have to eat but I just stopped. That just happened. That's what I know it. Together, it just happened. I wasn't getting it.
Okay. Can I ask you, were you punishing him because of how you felt? Did he remind you of yourself?
He was way different than I was.
Then why Jacari?
Well, because the way he acted, the way he acted, way more than anybody.
Okay. So did Jacari get a lot? I'm sorry, it's just a little difficult to hear you. I got the vending machine out there making noise. Was Jacari getting punished in other ways too?
Like, as far as what?
He had some healed, broken bones.
Oh, yeah.
Was that from him getting punished for stealing the food?
Moye seems to blame a lot of his son's murder on his fiancée who died in what he said was an overdose. Moye had custody, not just of Jacari, but of his two sisters who also lived in that house, who he said were not restricted to eating food like the 12-year-old boy was. The boy also had broken bones. Moye said he would beat Jacari if he caught the boy with food at times he didn't want him to be eating.
What about the whoopings? Because he had some pretty serious injuries. Can you describe these whoopings to us?
I just remember I was whooped him.
I mean, would you punch him? Would you, how would you whoop him? I mean, what?
I had something.
Would you hit him with something?
Yeah, like a shoe or something like that.
With a shoe or? Okay. Was it always something different?
No, I remember. I just, the only thing I remember it. The shoe.
The shoe? Okay. So he passes on the 3rd. The couple of days before that, I mean, did you know that he was getting close?
No, I didn't realize.
You didn't even realize?
Not at all.
So after he passes, what do you do?
I was in shock. And I just stood there like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. So the only thing I did was I just sat there. Back in the house with him. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do.
Did you think about calling for help?
No.
Can I ask why?
I don't even know why. I just didn't. I probably, because I'm shocked. I didn't know what to do. I was scared. Because I never ever heard that, so I was like, I didn't know what to do. I was afraid. I didn't know what to do.
How long did you stay with him?
I stayed for like a week.
Like a week? And then where'd you go?
After that, that's when I was with. So that's when I went downtown.
So we have a father who starved and beat his son, a son who just wanted to eat. Now, even after his boy died, it's important to note that Moye never called police. He ran, and he left his 12-year-old son on the floor, dead, only to be found by his 22-year-old brother a week later. Moye also tells police that he thinks the longest that Jacari went without food was just 2 days. But in this interview, officers don't seem to buy that because the boy was so emaciated and he weighed only 58 pounds when he was found. So it had to have been much longer than that. Detectives were also not buying that Jacari was only beaten with a shoe like his dad claimed.
So he had some broken bones, and we're just trying to understand exactly what happened. And the broken bones would not come from, a whooping with a shoe. He had some pretty strong bones in his body that were broken, and they were at various stages of healing, which means they happened over a period of time, and they were healing, and they're very strong bones, okay? Like, everyone can break their nose, right? It's fairly easy to break your nose, but like your leg, it's pretty hard to break. Do you have any idea why he would have some broken bones?
No. I mean, the only thing was, like I said, I was doing like a shoe, and the shoe was kind of like a thick sole.
Okay.
So,
Think that might have caused it? Okay. When Jacari was being whooped, did he make noises? Did he cry? What was Jacari's reaction to being whooped?
He cried.
Did he have any issues walking after any of the whoopings?
I never seen that.
Never seen it? Do you think Jacari would tell you if his leg was hurting or if he was having problems walking? You think he would?
Moye also says that his son hadn't been in school for a year. Police tell him that Jacari had food in his pockets when his body was found.
So if you went 2 days without eating, how would you feel? Have you ever gone 2 days without eating?
Ever?
Yep.
Never go though.
Not that you know of? What's the longest period you went without eating?
But yeah, I see what you're saying though.
So would you, while you and Jacari are home, if let's say Jacari's acting up and Jacari's being punished, would you eat in front of them or anything like that?
No, I don't think so. A lot of times I will eat. That's how to get you.
Moye was at large for roughly 4 months. He was eventually found in the city of Milwaukee. One shocking moment that I found was when detectives tell him that they believe he has been active on social media, posting on Facebook about this case. Here's that moment.
So since this happened, there were a lot of conversations on Facebook. Was that always you talking and just pretending to be someone else? Because a lot of people were coming at you.
Was me.
It was always you? Yeah. So there's a couple of messages in there where it says that what happened to Jacari wasn't an accident.
You say it's a couple of messages that was not an accident.
That you had responded then to people saying that what happened wasn't an accident.
I can't remember.
Can't remember? So I have, particularly, there's one here. His son was intentional, so don't get it twisted. It was sent in November. It's from you.
He probably attacked it wrong because I even sent out another one saying, I sent out quite a few of them saying, the guy never met for and stuff like that. So that probably was like a misprint.
Misprint?
Yeah, it had to be because it's a lot of times I was type and it my wrong.
Okay.
So if that was, because I sent up a lot of ones telling everybody I was not in my right mind, and I never I just be how to do it.
Are a lot of those text messages and stuff like that saved in your phone?
I believe so.
So Moye claims that that Facebook post was a misprint. Moye was sentenced to 47.5 years in prison. He pleaded guilty to first-degree reckless homicide, chronic neglect of a child, and failure to report the death of a child. And this is an image from a court appearance per WITI-TV in Milwaukee. Moye spoke with detectives in this interrogation video we have for a little less than an hour and a half. And at the end of the video, before they finish, one detective asked Moye what he would say to his son, the boy who he beat, who he starved, who he tortured, and who he killed. This is what he said.
What would you say to Jacari if you could right now?
I'll just I'm sorry. And I ain't with I ain't with anything that happened.
Joining us now is Detective Sergeant Kyle Schoberg, also the host of the Shots Fired podcast. Thank you for taking the time, as always, to be with us here on Law and Crime. We just watched some of this interrogation video with this suspect. What do you make of how detectives approach this conversation with someone who is accused of such a horrific crime?
Yeah, so it's tough. I mean, obviously, you have emotions that play into this as a human, but if these detectives are a father of kids, I'm a father. We've had to deal with these types of horrendous crimes. And unfortunately, you do have to come at it in the sense of your primary goal is to get answers out of the suspect. And so that's why their demeanor is calm and cool. Internally, they're not feeling like that, but that's their approach to this. And you got to treat people like that in order to get what you want out of them.
So it was about like an hour and a half that they spoke with, and I said he's accused of a crime. Since we've gotten this video. I mean, he was convicted at the end of last year of this, pleaded guilty to these charges. So he did murder his son. It's about an hour and a half, and throughout I noticed that there's just little tidbits of new information that the detectives kind of bring forward as the conversation goes. How much planning is there ahead of time when you know you're going to sit down with someone, you might have these pieces of evidence about what the game plan is going to be and when you're going to bring up certain topics?
Yeah, so obviously the two detectives are going to be in the room. They're going to game plan prior to doing the interview. They're going to go over their entire case again, whatever evidence they have. And there's different theories and philosophies on different styles of interviewing. One style would be going in there, let that person say their side of the story, right? Don't interrupt them. Just let them talk, say what they want to say, knowing that you have the evidence and the truth in the background. Now, that would be to dictate whether or not, or to see whether or not they're going to be a truth teller, or is this person lying based on the information that you have. And then there's, feeding them some type of information, trying to get them to tell you something. And in this case, that's the route the detectives went. And you got to be careful with that, because if you feed somebody, some type of specific information or give them a leading question, they may just agree with you. And at one point in the interview, he asked him if he had hit him with the shoe. And then the dad responded, yeah, I used a shoe to hit him. Well, that may not necessarily be true. He's just going to agree with them because that's his state of mind. And so it really kind of dictates based on the person's demeanor. He seems like he may have some type of mental health issue, or he's just playing that off that way. But he wasn't making a whole lot of sense. He's kind of hard to understand. His body posturing, you could tell he's very uncomfortable. His arms are crossed. He's slouched down. His shoulders are slumped forward. He's backed into the corner of that wall. That guy is incredibly uncomfortable in that interview. And so, again, those are just things as a detective you want to pick up on and then use that to your advantage while you're conducting these interviews. So they're very tricky. You really got to base it based on the person's demeanor at the time.
Did you feel, I mean, he admits that his son died when he was in the house, and it was from just malnutrition was the reason. And in the beginning, it seemed like the detectives wanted him to say it, and maybe he wasn't aware. I mean, about the mental health issues, it did not appear that he was, to be bluntly, someone who is an incredibly smart person. But then near the end of the interview, they say the boy died of malnutrition. Is that kind of the game plan where, okay, let's see if he'll say it, and then if an hour from now we're still kind of dancing around what he's talking about, let's see if he'll agree with what we put forward?
It just depends. You don't have to get him to admit anything to get conviction, right? If you already have the autopsy, you know what their cause of death is. telling him that information or not really isn't going to dictate whether or not he's going to be found guilty by a jury. You really just want to hear his side of the story. And if the guy's going to lie and deny all these things that happened to this boy, he had all these broken bones that they discovered during his autopsy. You can't deny that when he's in his care and custody. And so that's where, like, you're either truth telling or you're not telling the truth. You already have the evidence. And at the very end of the interview or the interrogation, once you get their side of the story, then you can circle back and show them, well, hey, how do you explain this? How do you explain this? And then again, whatever it is that they choose to say is what they're going to say. They're either going to go down a path of not being honest, or they're going to be honest with you and tell you exactly what happened. So, and in this type of interview that they were doing, they were kind of wanting him to tell them what happened. And so they would sometimes feed him information. And it seemed to me he would just kind of take that information that they would give him and then just agree with them at some point. So again, you just got to be careful about that. You don't always have to get them to answer the exact question you want out of them. Just let them say what they're going to say with the evidence that you have to prove otherwise.
How many people typically, and it's hard to say, I just always find it fascinating where you have this incredibly dangerous person in some ways who's perhaps facing, maybe he's playing dumb, but he's facing the likelihood he'll never be out of jail, prison, ever again. How many people are watching these interviews as it happens to make sure that the detectives in there are safe, but also making sure everybody sees what's going on? Because there's so many people that work on cases like this.
Yeah, so generally speaking, you're always going to have 2 detectives in the room to do the interview. And then, yes, oftentimes that is being live fed to another room where you have other investigators probably listening in or watching, and they may be formulating their own questions. They then could text the detectives that are in the room. They may take a break, go out, talk to those other people. But everyone's kind of brainstorming. And when you are doing these types of interviews, the folks in the other room are oftentimes writing things down on what this person is saying and matching it up to the evidence that they have. And then again, they'll later come back and compare the 2 stories and call him out on whether or not he is lying. So to answer your question, yes, there are other people in a room. They are taking notes, and they are also help facilitating the questions that need to be asked.
It's almost cliche here, like good cop, bad cop, but I did notice with the 2 detectives that were in the room, one of them seemed to be trying to reason a little bit more with Moye, the suspect, and then the other one would come in a little less frequently, but he seemed to be a little bit more direct in his questions. Is that maybe what they're like as people, or is that choreographed?
Well, sometimes I think people are just generally like that, and sometimes people have less of patience than somebody else, but sometimes that is also a tactic that could be used. And you want that person who's being the nice cop to build a rapport with the suspect, so the suspect feels more comfortable with him, and maybe he'll give him more information, where you have this other guy who's not as patient, he's calling him out on stuff. That might cause a little bit of tension between the suspect and that detective, to where, okay, he's not going to talk to him, which is fine. That was a tactic they wanted to use. I'm going to talk to this guy because I feel like he and I are getting along and we have that rapport with each other. So it goes both ways.
And now I want to turn to some of the body cam video that was released and just some of the details surrounding this story. The judge, when this defendant was sentenced, said it was like a horror movie inside this house. And it was just really tough to watch.
Yeah.
And how common, I guess, what's it like for you as a detective when you come across just a home that's in this state? I mean, you could hear the officer almost, you could tell how bad it probably smelled in that house when they walked inside.
Yeah, so I was just in a house yesterday that when I saw that and I was reading it, it just reminded me, it took me back to this house I was in yesterday where we did have to wear masks. It was just so gross, right? And smelly. And sometimes you sit there and you wonder, how do people even live like this? Now, thank gosh, the house we were in yesterday, they didn't have kids, but they're deplorable conditions. And, if you do come into a house like that and there are kids present in the home, we would immediately take those kids. Sometimes it's sad. You do go into homes, and sometimes people don't live to what your and my standards might be of living, especially if we have kids. And it's very hard because not always can you take kids. There's just a lot of things that you have to go by and call CPS, Child Protective Services, run these things by them, show them photos. And like I said, sometimes it's difficult to walk away from a house with kids that you or I would think there's no way I would allow my kids to be in this situation, but it meets the standards of of these kids being taken care for by their parents. And so it's very tricky. It's sad. I hate dealing with calls like that, but it's not uncommon.
Yeah, and it's just, you think of I just think of the officers as they were searching through this home, and you had the body of this young boy still in the house. And
Yeah.
when it is that type of situation, and that's such a key piece of evidence, and it's hard to describe someone as evidence, but what are you thinking about as you enter one of these homes where there's just such a mess, but each piece could be a piece of evidence as this case goes forward?
Yeah, it's a nightmare. You have a body who's decomposing in the living room. That entire house has to be combed through. You're going to have a lot of evidence technicians in there, and that's the bad part about the whole thing is you do have to comb through a lot of stuff. I mean, you want to find every little piece of evidence you can for the sake of the victim, with this little 12-year-old boy who's helpless against this grown man who clearly was physically abusing him, mentally abusing him, and not allowing him to eat. So, the boy's super weak. It's sad. And you do have to go through that entire house. I mean, you're not going to leave. There's no stone that goes unturned in a situation like that. You are going to comb through all of it.
And I know this is probably more of a question for someone who would work for a family services, a DCF, something like that. But just in cases where you see child abuse like this, and you have someone where the dad had said the boy hadn't been in school for a year. And so that just raises questions of how someone falls through the cracks like this. How common is it you see that, where this is someone who, just because there are so many kids and these family services organizations are so overwhelmed that they just fall through the cracks? And what can we do about that going forward so cases like this don't happen?
Yeah, I remember there was a Netflix documentary, and I can't recall the name of it, but it was about this little boy who suffered circumstances similar to this, and ultimately he died as well. And those were all the questions that were asked also in this documentary: is why didn't the school report him not being there? Teachers notice him, showing up to school with odd haircuts, bruising. I don't know. I don't have an answer other than, if you see stuff like that, you have to report it. Whether you feel uncomfortable about it or you don't want to be the person to maybe ring that bell, and maybe it is nothing, but you're better to do that and let law enforcement, investigate it and have it turn out to be nothing, than not report it. And these things are going on at home that you can't see, but you notice these little red flags about these kids, and then you just don't say anything. And then ultimately the worst happens and they end up dead, like in this case. So I think the best answer is just don't ignore signs that you're seeing. Teachers know these kids. They know when their behavior is normal. They know when their physical appearance is normal, and when they're not. And when they're not, that's when you need to say something. And they're supposed to. I mean, they're mandated reporters. So if this kid hadn't been to school in a year, obviously that's a problem. And then my other question was, where's the mother? She hadn't seen her son, and it said, I think, a few months that he hadn't been to her home. And so,
claimed.
Oh, was it 3? Okay, I'm sorry. So I misspoke on that. It had been years. So there's just all these questions that need to be asked. And it's sad that the older brother had to kind of figure it out for himself, go in there and find his younger brother deceased. It's a terrible situation.
No, it was. And this dad will spend 47 and a half years in prison. That's likely the rest of his life. Just an incredibly sad story. And but important to talk about, because you were in a home like this yesterday, and these cases happen. Kyle Schoberg, thank you as always for taking the time to be with us on Law and Crime. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
That will do it for this episode of On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.